Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, the Imperial Lyric Theatre hides a deadly secret. A feared critic is found dead inside a velvet theater box, and every actor on stage becomes a suspect. Only Hercule Poirot, with his brilliant little gray cells, can uncover the truth lurking behind the curtains. Take your seat. Let the lights dim, because the mystery begins now. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 1. Opening night at the Imperial. Lyric London glowed that evening with the kind of rain-polished glamour only a West End night could produce. Cabs lined up along the pavement outside the Imperial Lyric Theatre, their lamps glinting off puddles like scattered stars. Well-dressed couples hurried up the red-carpeted steps. Opera cloaks pulled close against the chill. Hercule Poirot, immaculately dressed and perfectly composed, stepped out of a cab and regarded the facade with a small nod of approval. "Très joli," he murmured. "The English, they do the theatre very well. They dress their illusions as if they were royalty." The theatre manager, Victor Gaunt, hurried forward from the foyer, flushing with a mixture of pride and nerves. "Mr. Poirot, I can't tell you what an honor this is," he gushed, extending his hand. "To have Hercule Poirot at my premiere, why, it's practically a guarantee of success." Poirot smiled. "Success is usually earned, Monsieur Gaunt, but I am happy to see your optimism so full of the sparkle." Gaunt laughed a little too loudly. "This play will change everything," he said. "For the Imperial, for me, for our star. The critics will have to admit it." He cast a quick look toward the street, where a lean man in a dark overcoat was stepping from another cab, his face sharp and lined like a hawk's. "Ah," Gaunt muttered. "Speaking of critics." Poirot followed his gaze. "Who is our friend?" he asked. "Felix Arden," Gaunt said, his jaw tightening. "The most feared theatre critic in London. One word from him and a show lives or dies. He's reviewing us tonight." Poirot watched Arden with interest. The critic moved with easy arrogance, ignoring the doorman's attempt at a welcome, his eyes already scanning the crowd as though searching for weaknesses. "He has enemies." "This monsieur," Poirot murmured. "Everyone in the profession," Gaunt replied dryly. "But they all still invite him." Gaunt leaned closer. "I've given him box 3, the best velvet box in the house. View straight to the stage, champagne on ice. He won't be able to say we treated him poorly." "A velvet theatre box," Poirot mused. "How very fitting." Inside, the Imperial Lyric glittered with gold leaf and crystal. The great chandelier burned like a sun, illuminating tiers of red plush seats and dark, intimate boxes draped in crimson velvet. From his seat in the stalls, Poirot took it all in. The orchestra tuning below, the murmur of voices, the swish of programs, the rustle and perfume of the audience settling into place. On the stage, the curtain was still down. Poirot's eyes moved upward to the boxes numbered discreetly in gilt. Box 3, directly above him, protruded slightly over the stalls, its front trimmed with rich red velvet and tassels. A perfect place for someone to watch and to be watched. Gaunt whispered at his shoulder. "Our star tonight is Lillian Vale, best actress I've ever worked with. She carries the whole show. The understudy, Margot Kent, is talented, but this play is Lillian's." Across the stalls, Poirot spotted Lillian herself as she slipped quietly through a side entrance, accompanied by her dresser. Even in a plain rehearsal coat, she was luminous fine-boned, with cool dark eyes and a mouth that already seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken lines. A young man near the aisle pail, with ink-stained fingers, watched Lillian pass with a mixture of awe and something else. Envy, perhaps. The playwright? Poirot asked. Yes, God said. Julian Marsh, brilliant, intense, perpetually terrified. This is his first major production. Poirot inclined his head. Then tonight, many lives wait upon the turn of a page. And the mood of our Monsieur Arden. The house lights dimmed. Murmurs fell away. The conductor raised his baton. The first notes rose from the pit, and the red curtain began to climb. The play veil of smoke unfolded in acts of passion, betrayal, and whispered menace. The audience leaned forward, held in a web of words and stage light. Lillian Vale commanded every scene she entered. Julian Marsh watched, knuckles white on his program. Victor Gaunt dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief whenever a line stumbled. Now and then. Poirot glanced up at box 3. The red velvet curtain at its side was drawn back, leaving Felix Arden visible in silhouette. Leaning on the plush rail, motionless, he was, Poirot noticed, not applauding. At the end of the first act, the curtain fell to enthusiastic applause from most of the house. As the lights rose, voices rose with them, excited, questioning. Poirot stood, smoothing his cuffs. The interval, he said. Always a dangerous time. People talk. People drink. People decide what they think. Victor Gaunt forced a laugh. Let's hope they're thinking good things. He glanced upward to box 3 again. If anyone up there isn't, I'll know it tomorrow morning in cold print. He moved off, duty pulling him in several directions at once. Poirot remained in the aisle a moment longer, watching the flow of the audience. In the velvet box above, Felix Arden did not join the movement. He remained seated alone, the figure of him framed by shadow and velvet. From the foyer came the clink of glasses, the low murmur of gossip. Poirot turned, and as he moved toward the lobby, he could not shake the faint, unwelcome intuition that he had just seen Felix Arden alive for the last time. Chapter 2. Death in Box 3. Imperial Lyric's foyer was a swirl of champagne bubbles and speculation. Brilliant first act. A bit slow in the middle, I thought. Lillian is divine. The rest, serviceable. Did you see Arden? Stone-faced. Not a good sign. Poirot accepted a glass of water rather than champagne and drifted through the conversations, listening. He was not here professionally, he reminded himself. Tonight he was merely a guest. Poirot, my dear fellow, boomed a familiar voice. Chief Inspector Japp, of Scotland Yard, materialized beside him as if conjured from cigar smoke and London air. You at the theater too? Japp grinned. Can't be much wrong with it if you're here. Poirot smiled. I confess, mon ami, I am merely an observer tonight, though it is interesting to see how many lives depend upon the opinion of one man. You mean Arden? Japp snorted. Vicious pen, that one. I've seen grown men more frightened of his column than of the dock. From the corridor leading, Back into the auditorium came a small commotion. A ripple of confused sound. Poirot's head turned instantly. An usher hurried past them. Pale. "Excuse me, pardon." Victor Gaunt appeared behind him, his face bloodless. "Mr. Poirot." "Inspector," he gasped. "Forgive me, something's happened." Jap's easy mood vanished. "What's wrong?" "It's Felix Arden," Gaunt stammered. He's not answering. We knocked for the second act, and when we went in, he's in his box. But he's not, he won't wake up." Jap's eyes sharpened. "Show me," he said briskly. Poirot and Jap followed Gaunt up the red-carpeted side stairs to the box level. The corridor there was narrow, lined with doors, each leading to its own little velvet kingdom. A young usher stood outside box 3, wringing his hands. I didn't touch anything." "Sir," he said to Gaunt, "he was just sitting there. I thought he were asleep, but—" Gaunt swallowed and opened the door. Box 3 smelled of perfume, dust, and the faint sweetness of spilled champagne. The lamps glowed softly, casting a warm light over the red velvet walls and plush sheeting. Felix Arden sat in the front chair, his back slightly slumped, his head tilted at an unnatural angle toward his shoulder. One hand still rested on the rail. His eyes were half open, staring at the stage beyond the lowered curtain. Poirot's gaze went first to the stillness of the body, then to the color of the lips, then to the glass on the small side table. Jap moved forward. "Felix Arden?" he said sharply. "Sir?" No response. He put 2 fingers to the critic's throat. After a moment, he withdrew them. "He's gone," Jap said quietly. "Dead." Victor Gaunt made a choked sound. "Oh, God. Oh, no, this cannot." Poirot stepped to the side of the chair, leaning just close enough to see without touching. "No obvious wound," he murmured. "No sign of struggle. He is seated as if merely resting. But the eyes, they do not lie. And the lips—" He tilted his head. A faint blue tinge. "You see it, Jap?" Jap nodded grimly. "Poison, you think?" "Perhaps," Poirot said. "Or a failure of the heart, induced by something more deliberate." Jap straightened. "The door?" The usher echoed at once. "I was outside, sir, the whole interval. He never called. No one went in or out that I saw." Poirot's eyes went to the tiny private corridor beyond the box, where a narrow second door was tucked behind a velvet drape. And that door? "The service access," Victor Gaunt said hoarsely. "Used by staff in emergencies. It leads to the outer passage and a staircase down to the stage level. It's usually kept locked." He tried the handle. Down below, in the backstage corridor, he could hear faint voices. Laughter from someone who had not yet understood the permanence of death. A door closing. The distant melancholy sound of a piano key tested by an idle hand. Poirot slipped the pin into his pocket next to the metallic thread. "Very well," he said to the empty box. "We have the where, the when, the how." He turned toward the door. "Now we require only the who and the why." Chapter 5. Masks and Motives in Lillian Vale's dressing room. The atmosphere was thick with perfume and tension. The star sat before a large mirror surrounded by bulbs. Her reflection fractured into multiple angles by smaller mirrors propped beside it. Her face, half wiped of makeup, was strangely bare, a woman between selves. "You return, Monsieur Poirot," she said quietly as he entered. "Am I to be arrested for possessing powder and pins?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Non, mademoiselle. Not yet. I merely wish to ask further questions while the impressions of the night remain fresh." Her dresser, Alice, hovered uncertainly. "You may stay," Poirot told her. "I have no desire for secrets whispered later." Lillian arched a brow, very considerate. Poirot gestured around the room. "You have many beautiful costumes," he observed. "Some with metallic thread of great fineness." "Yes," Lillian said. "Part of the design. The director wanted the heroine to shimmer like smoke." Poirot nodded. "And during the interval, you were here the entire time?" "Yes," she said. "Alice can confirm it." Alice nodded quickly. "She didn't go anywhere, sir. Changed shoes, fixed her hair, had some water. That's all." Poirot watched Lillian in the mirror. "And yet," he said softly, "a piece of thread from one of your costumes was found in the velvet curtain of box 3. For a moment, her eyes betrayed surprise. Then they cooled. "Costumes shed," she said. "Threads travel. Anyone could have brushed against me in the foyer, carried it away. Or one of the stagehands. Your pin of accusation is very fine, Monsieur Poirot." "Perhaps too fine." Poirot inclined his head. "Perhaps. Tell me, what was your relationship with Felix Arden?" She smiled bitterly. "The same as everyone else's. He had the power to lift us or break us. Years ago, in a smaller theater, he wrote that I was a fragile light in a sea of darkness. It saved a dying production. My career began there. And later?" Poirot asked. Her eyes hardened. "Later, he grew cruel. His reviews became less about the work and more about the people. He hinted at things he had no right to know. My past, my origins. The fact that I did not come from the respectable schools and supper clubs he preferred. Did he ever threaten you directly?" Poirot asked. She hesitated. "He implied," she said, "that I owed him loyalty, that if I did not grant him access or interviews or exclusive truths, he could remind the world that I was not the polished creature they adored." Poirot's voice softened. "And recently?" Her hands tightened on the arms of the chair. "He requested a private conversation," she said, "before this production opened. In his words, to discuss my future. I declined. I told him I had nothing to say that he could not hear with the rest of the audience. And how did he respond?" A shadow passed over her face. "He smiled," she said, "and said, 'Then perhaps I shall remove the spotlight instead.'" Poirot studied her reflection. "You feared him." He said. "I refused to be owned by him," she replied. "Fear is only part of that." He nodded. "Did you know of any others he held in such a way?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Ask Julian. He lives in terror of the man discovering his first failed script. Ask Victor, who worries over every unpaid debt. Ask Margot, who would kill for one kind word from him." She paused. "Ask yourself, Monsieur Poirot and a man who delights in such control be killed without many hands wishing they were the ones who did it? Poirot turned to Alice. And you, mademoiselle? Did you see anyone go near box 3 during the interval? Alice shook her head. No, sir. I was here. Down the corridor, I heard some footsteps, maybe, but it's always busy then. People coming and going. I didn't notice anyone specifically. Poirot nodded. Very well. Thank you. He left the dressing room, his mind turning now not just on Lillian, but on the understudy. Margot thought her dressing room was smaller, plainer. Margot sat on the edge of her chair, still half in costume, eyes red-rimmed. Is it true? She asked as Poirot entered. Felix Arden is dead. Yes, Poirot said. It is true. She shook her head. Everyone dreamed of him writing something kind, she whispered. No one really believed he would die, did you? Poirot asked gently. She looked up, startled. No. He sat. You envied Lillian Vale, he said without preamble. You longed for the leading role. You rehearsed in your head the speech you would give if she fell ill. We? Margot's cheeks flushed. Of course I envied her, she said. She has everything I want. Talent, yes, but also luck, connections. She's a star. I'm a shadow waiting for a light that never moves. Did you ever think, Poirot asked softly, that a scathing review from Felix Arden might dim her light and make yours shine by comparison? She stared at him. You think I'd kill a man to maybe, possibly, one day get a chance to replace her? That's insane. Poirot tilted his head. You mistake me. I do not say you did. I merely test the strength of motives in the minds of those who were here. She pressed her lips together. I was in the corridor during the interval, she said at last. I did not go near his box. I saw Julian once, pacing like a ghost. I heard Lillian's door close. That is all. He regarded her a moment longer. Thank you, mademoiselle. In the corridor outside, Poirot paused, closing his eyes briefly. He could feel the theater breathing. It was a living entity, its staff, its actors, its critics and patrons, all part of one great nervous system. Somewhere in its veins, a toxin had been introduced, in the form of murder. Now it fell to him to trace it back to the hand that held the needle. Chapter 6. Lines in the margins. Julian Marsh's lodgings were 2 streets away from the theater, close enough for panic, far enough for despair. Poirot found him there the next morning, sitting at a small table crowded with pages, ashtrays, and coffee cups. The curtains were half drawn, as though Julian feared daylight might reveal something he wasn't ready to see. When Poirot entered, the playwright looked as though he had not slept. I suppose you've come to tell me my play is dead, Julian said hoarsely. Poirot removed his hat and sat. Non, monsieur. I have come to ask you about a dead critic. Whether your play survives him, that is a separate mystery. Julian let out a sound that was part laugh, part groan. Felix Arden dies in my box on my opening night. The gods have a sense of humor. Poirot glanced at the table. Among the scattered drafts lay the program from the night before, Arden's copy, retrieved from the box. Marginal notes crawled along its edges in a sharp, unforgiving hand. Poirot slid it toward Julian. You know his writing well, oui? Too well, Julian muttered. Read, Poirot invited. Tell me what mood he died in. Julian scanned a few lines, his eyes tightening. First scene, overwrought but promising. He turned the page. Leading lady, compelling. Text, straining for profundity. Further along, on the margin beside a key speech, writer loves his metaphors more than his characters. Julian winced. He wasn't delighted, he said. But he wasn't savaging it either. Not yet. Poirot pointed to the final scribbled line on the last page. It was only half finished. Act ending effective. If second half delivers, this May. The sentence broke off mid-word, the pen stroke trailing into nothing. He never finished the thought, Julian whispered. None, Poirot said. He finished his life instead. Julian stared at the program, fingers trembling. I didn't kill him, he said suddenly. If that's what you're circling. Yes, I was terrified of his review. Yes, I imagined him dead once or twice. Every artist does. But I was at the bar. Ask anyone. Poirot steepled his fingers. In the bar, did you leave your drink at any point? Walk away, return? Julian frowned. Yes, once. I went to the gents. My glass was still there when I came back. Why? Poirot shook his head. Simply a thought. But I believe Monsieur Arden was not killed by drink. His glass is not, as they say, the smoking pistol. Julian laughed weakly. Then what is? Poirot smiled slightly. A very small thing. A detail. A pin. He let the word hang in the air. Julian blinked. A pin? Like a sewing pin? You think someone stabbed him to death with a pin? Poirot's voice remained mild. There are substances, monsieur, that need only the smallest wound to enter the blood. A prick barely felt that begins a storm inside the heart. Julian went pale. Good God. Poirot leaned forward. Tell me, Monsieur Marsh, did Felix Arden know something about you beyond your writing? Julian swallowed. He knew. Enough, he said. My early failures. The pseudonym I used when I wrote commercial rubbish to pay rent. He threatened to reveal it once. Said the public loved tearing down a serious writer who had once written farce. Did he renew that threat recently? Poirot asked. Julian hesitated. He hinted, he admitted. He said, it would make an excellent paragraph for your enemies to know how badly you once begged to be produced. I told him I didn't care. But I did. Of course I did. He looked up, eyes hollow. I didn't kill him for it. Poirot studied him. You are ambitious, insecure, emotional, he said gently. A man of nerves, not of needles. I do not think your hand delivered the poison last night. Julian sagged with relief. Though he knew it meant little legally, Poirot's gaze fell on a small vase on the table, holding a single wilting carnation. Who gave you the flower? He asked. Julian blinked. Margot, he said. Before the show. She said it was for luck. Ah, Poirot smiled faintly. Sometimes, monsieur, those who stand just outside the light see more than those blinded by it. He rose. Do not leave London, he said quietly. The inspector will wish to speak to you again. But I think your greatest punishment is already in progress." Julian let out a flat breath. "What's that?" "Wondering," Poirot said, "whether Felix Arden's last unfinished sentence would have saved your play. Or buried it." He left Julian with his ghosts and returned to the street, where the theater's facade looked, strangely weary in daylight. The Imperial Lyric was closed for technical reasons that day, but staff were inside, moving like restless shadows. Poirot found Victor Gaunt in his office, staring at ledgers that no longer seemed to matter. "You look like a man waiting for a verdict," Poirot said. Gaunt rubbed his temples. "I'm waiting to know whether I have a future," he said. "You don't understand what a review like Arden's can do, Poirot. One bad column and the investors pull out, the agents stop returning calls, the good actors vanish. I built this place back up from near bankruptcy. I can't watch it die again." "You gambled," Poirot said. "On a play, on a star, on a critic's favor. That is the theater." Gaunt looked at him sharply. "You think I killed him," he said flatly. "I think," Poirot said, "that you had motive. But motive is a common thing in this case. Means and opportunity are rarer." Gaunt sat back. "I was downstairs the whole interval," he insisted. "You can ask the bar staff, the box office. I paced like a caged tiger. I sent the usher to check on him just before the second act. I never went near that box." Poirot nodded slowly. "Then answer me this. Who has regular access to the service stair door behind box 3? "Stagehands," Gaunt said. "Myself, the head usher. Lillian's dresser sometimes, if she needs to get round the house quickly. Anyone with a master key." "Keys can be copied," Poirot murmured. "Or borrowed." Gaunt exhaled. "You think it was someone on my payroll? Wonderful." "Do not despair too soon, monsieur," Poirot said. "A scandal may yet bring more audiences than a critic ever could if it ends with justice, not mystery." He left Gaunt to his ledgers and made his way backstage again. The labyrinth of corridors felt different now, every dark corner a possible hiding place, every half-open door a held breath. Near the wardrobe department, he found racks of costumes, sequins, velvet, lace, all hanging in shimmering rows. Alice, Lillian's dresser, was there, sorting through garments with brisk movements. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, startled. "I didn't expect." "You are hard-working, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "You care for your mistress's appearance. It is an important trust." She flushed with a touch of pride. "Miss Vale deserves it," she said. "She's kind. Not like some. She remembers names. Tips well. She worked hard to get where she is. People forget that." Poirot's eyes drifted over the costumes. "This one," he said, touching a shimmering shawl with pale gold threads. "This is Lillian's Act 2 wrap." "Yes," Alice said. "Custom-made. Imported fabric. She wears it in the confrontation scene." Poirot noticed something. "Here," he murmured, pointing to a seam. "Recently repaired." Alice nodded. "Yesterday afternoon," she said. "One of the threads snagged in rehearsal, started to pull. I fixed it with new gold thread from the workroom." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "New thread?" "Yes, from this spool. she said, reaching into a basket and producing a small reel of metallic gold. Poirot took it, comparing it mentally to the one in his pocket. Identical. And does anyone else's costume use this thread? He asked. Alice thought. Only one other, she said. Margot's shawl in Act 3. It was originally plain, but she asked if I could pretty it up a bit, her words. I added a border with the leftover thread. Poirot's eyes cooled. Margot Kent's shawl, he repeated. Interesting. Alice frowned. Is something wrong? Poirot smiled gently. Nothing that cannot be put right. Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. As he walked away, his mind assembled the pieces with greater clarity. The metallic thread found in Box 3's velvet curtain. The pin-stained, small, used by someone accustomed to quick costume fixes. The witness statements Margot in the corridor, nervous, watchful. Lillian static in her room with an alibi. The small kindness, the carnation for Julian. The understudy's desire to be seen as more than a shadow, ambition long deferred, could curdle into something sharp. Poirot turned toward the smaller, plainer dressing room down the hall. It was time to speak to Margot Kent again. Chapter 7. The understudy's moment. Margot's dressing room felt even smaller in daylight, without the half-applied makeup and stage light to glamorize it. The space revealed cracked plaster, a single wilting rose in a glass, and a battered trunk that had seen more boarding houses than opening nights. Margot herself sat at the dressing table, staring at her reflection as if it belonged to someone else. Mademoiselle Kent, Poirot said softly from the doorway. She started, then relaxed when she saw it was him. I suppose this is where you tell me I'm a suspect, she said dully. Poirot closed the door behind him. In any crime with this many motives, almost everyone is a suspect, he said. But some more precisely than others. She gave a short, bitter laugh. That figures. Poirot moved closer, eyes flicking to the shawl folded neatly on a nearby chair. Plain dark fabric edged in fine gold. He picked it up delicately. This is yours, he said. Yes, she said. Act 3, if I ever get there. The trim, Poirot observed. Very fine. Recently added. Alice did it, Margot said. I thought if I'm ever on stage in it, I want to look like I belong there. Not like a poor cousin. Poirot nodded slowly. Tell me again, mademoiselle, where you were during the interval. This time with all the details, no matter how small. She shifted uneasily. I told you. I was in the corridor. Running lines, walking, alone? Poirot asked. She hesitated. For some of it, she said. Julian passed me once. Nolan shouted something about cues. I heard Lillian's door close. That's all. You did not go near Box 3? Poirot asked. Her eyes flickered. Is this because I said I envied her? She snapped. Do you think that makes me a murderer? I think, Poirot said gently, that envy is a seed. What grows from it depends on what waters it. He laid the shawl across the back of the chair, smoothing its gold edge. A thread from this shawl was found in Felix Arden's box. He said quietly. Margot's face drained of color. That's not possible. On the contrary, Poirot said. It is very possible. You see, metallic thread does not hide its travels. It catches, it snags, it clings to velvet and to memory. She stood abruptly. I never went in there, she said. Why would I? He didn't even know I existed. Poirot's gaze remained steady, didn't he? He asked. Or is that what you wanted everyone to believe? She wrapped her arms around herself. I thought. She swallowed. I thought if I stayed distant, he might notice me. The quiet one, you know? The hidden talent. But he never did. He barely glanced at me. When he came on the first rehearsal, he looked through me. It was like being erased. Poirot took a step closer. Yet you did something very visible last night, he said softly. You killed him, softly. You killed him. She flinched as if struck. No, she whispered. Poirot's voice did not harden. If anything, it grew almost sorrowful. You left your room with your shawl, he said. You walked the corridor, picking your moment. You knew when everyone else was occupied, Lillian in her room, Victor in the bar, Julian pacing, Nolan backstage. You slipped down the service stair, the one you've used before to watch from the shadows. Her eyes glistened. How? Alice told me, Poirot said quietly. She did not mean to. But she mentioned you liked to watch from up high when you weren't on. He gestured as if tracing the path. You unlocked the service door with a borrowed key, perhaps lifted from a hook, perhaps copied. You entered the velvet box quietly. Felix Arden alone did not fear a young woman in costume. Perhaps he was amused, perhaps flattered that someone sought him out. Margot's breathing quickened. I only wanted to talk to him, she said. At first. Poirot nodded. I believe you. You wanted a chance, a kind word, a promise. But he did not give it, did he? Her hands clenched. He laughed, she said. When I said I was the understudy, he said, then I hope for your sake the star breaks her leg. It would make a better tragedy than that script. She blinked furiously. He said, Lillian was the only thing holding the play up. That the rest of us could fall into the orchestra and no one would care. And you? Poirot asked gently. What did he say of you? She looked away, pretty. Interchangeable, she whispered. Like I was a cushion on a chair, replaceable, unnecessary. Her shoulders shook. Do you know what it's like, she said, to spend your life waiting to be chosen? To always be second, third, never? To know that one man's sentence in tomorrow's paper might decide whether you ever matter at all? Poirot's voice was very soft. So you decided to write your own sentence. She laughed, then a sharp, broken sound. I didn't plan it, she said. Not really. I had the pin from fixing a hem. I had. Something Julian had dropped in the bar weeks ago, heart drops, he said, for his nerves. I read about them. In the wrong dose, they can stop a heart. Poirot's eyes darkened. You experimented, he said. I tested a drop on my own tongue, she said. It burned. Made me dizzy. I thought, in a stronger dose, in a vulnerable place. She looked at her hands as if they no longer belonged to her. I sat beside him, she said. He let me. He thought I was offering myself, or a secret or gossip. I said I adored his writing, that I hung on his every word. For a second, he looked at me like I existed. Her voice broke. I touched his shoulder. I told him I wanted him to remember me. Just once, for anything at all. And while he smirked, I pushed the pin in just here. She tapped her own neck, just under the ear. He barely felt it, she said. He flinched, then laughed, said something about clumsy actresses. I left. That's all. I left. Poirot closed his eyes briefly, imagining the scene, the box, the bodies, the pin's invisible kiss. Arden sitting, finishing a line, feeling something odd in his chest. Then nothing at all. I told myself he deserved it, Margot whispered. That he had killed more careers than I ever would. That I was just balancing the scales. Poirot opened his eyes. And now? He asked quietly. Do you still believe that? She began to cry, then not the dramatic tears of a stage tragedy, but the raw, helpless sobs of someone who had finally stepped into the light, only to find herself exposed as a criminal. No, she gasped. I've ruined everything. For the theater. For Lillian. For Julian. For me. I thought I was just a shadow. Shadows don't hurt anyone. But I did. I hurt him. I killed him. There was a knock on the door. Poirot turned. Chief Inspector Japp stood there, his face grave. From the way you're both looking, he said quietly, I'm guessing I don't need to ask if we've got the right person. Poirot stepped aside. Mademoiselle Margot Kent, he said gently, has something to tell you, mon ami. Margot straightened, wiping her face with shaking hands. I killed Felix Arden, she said, with a pin, in the velvet box. Because I wanted him to see me, and because I hated him for what he could do. Japp exhaled, as if some heavy weight had settled where he'd hoped it wouldn't. Margot Kent, he said formally, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You have the right to remain silent. Poirot watched as the words were spoken, as the cuffs appeared, as the understudy who had wanted nothing more than to be seen was finally looked at by everyone in the room for a reason she would never have chosen. On her way out, she looked back at Poirot. Do you think they'll remember me? She asked, voice very small. Poirot's reply was honest and therefore cruel. Yes, mademoiselle, he said, but not in the way you once hoped. She nodded, as though she had expected nothing else. Then the door closed behind her, and the theater seemed, for a moment, utterly silent. Outside, somewhere in the city, newspapers were already being printed with headlines they did not yet realize were incomplete. Soon, they would know a killer had indeed been hidden in the velvet theater box, not in the shadows of the rich or the powerful, but in the quiet heart of an understudy who, for one fatal interval, stepped out of the wings and rewrote the script of her own fate. Chapter 8. Curtains that do not close the Imperial Lyric Theatre reopened the next morning not for applause, but for silence. Police tape crossed the velvet aisles. The chandeliers were dimmed. The stage, usually breathing with life, stood barren, its painted flats ghost-like in the gray light. Poirot walked slowly across the orchestra pit bridge, his polished shoes echoing faintly. He paused at the stalls and looked up at box 3, now empty. Its velvet curtains pulled wide as if the theater itself wished to confess. Chief Inspector Japp joined him. Arms folded. "Well," Japp muttered, "we've got the culprit." "A confession. Motive, means. Should be straightforward." Poirot did not answer immediately. He stared at the box for a long time. "Too long. Japp, mon ami," he said at last, "have you ever wondered why the truth, when caught, sometimes feels incomplete?" Japp frowned. "You think she lied?" "Margot? No," Poirot said softly. "She confessed to what she did, but not to why it happened exactly as it did." He turned toward the stage. "Come. There is one more thing that must be understood." Together, they stepped onto the creaking boards, the scent of dust, rope, old curtains. It all whispered memories dotted the center stage. Poirot stopped. "Here," he murmured. "This is where the shadows form longest. This is where Margot has stood for years. Barely seen, barely heard. Watching Lillian Vale glow in the spotlight." He knelt and touched the wooden boards. Margot killed Felix Arden because she believed it would change her fate. But why did she believe that so strongly? Japp shook his head. Ambition, jealousy, vulnerability. What else? Poirot tapped the stage once. "She believed it," he whispered, "because someone fed that belief." He rose. Someone encouraged her obsession. Someone made her think that Arden's words would destroy her forever. Someone made her so desperate she mistook a critic's arrogance for a death sentence. Japp's eyes narrowed. "You think she was manipulated?" Poirot looked out across the empty seats. "Yes," he said. "Manipulated not into murder, but into believing that her entire world hung on one man's review." Japp blew out a breath. "By who?" "The star." Poirot's expression softened with sadness, not accusation. "No, mon ami. By the theater itself." He gestured around them. "This building, this system, this hierarchy, it raises the star and crushes the understudy. It makes gods of critics and beggars of artists. It creates quiet despair in the wings. It destroys slowly, until someone breaks quickly." Japp eyed him. "So you're saying no conspiracy, just pressure?" Poirot nodded. "And now the question becomes, how shall the curtain fall on such a tragedy?" Chapter 9. The last performance that evening. The principal cast gathered again, not for rehearsal, but for something sadder and more intimate. Lillian Vale stood in the center of the stage, a pale shawl around her shoulders. Victor Gaunt, Julian Marsh, Nolan Hughes, Alice, and the remaining staff stood silently around her. Poirot addressed them from the foot of the stage. "Felix Arden is dead. Margot Kent has confessed to the killing. The law will proceed accordingly." He paused. "But the theater must also understand its part. Theater must also understand its part." Victor Gaunt swallowed. "I never wanted this," he whispered. "I only wanted a successful show." Poirot regarded him gently. "You wanted too much from those who had too little," he said. "Margot wanted to be seen. You gave her no path but the shadow." Julian Marsh rubbed his eyes. "I should have talked to her more," he muttered. She asked once what I thought of her performance. I brushed her off, too nervous, too consumed with Arden. Lillian Vale closed her eyes. She was never a threat to me, she said softly. I never treated her like a rival. I didn't know she felt invisible. Poirot looked at her kindly. Mademoiselle, even stars cast shadows. It is not your fault that someone stood in one for too long. He stepped closer. But we must understand why the pin, the poison, the desperation found their home in this theater. He held up a tiny gold thread between his fingers. This thread, he said, connected not only a shawl to a murder, but an understudy to her final moment of visibility. Victor Gaunt bowed his head. What do we do now? Poirot smiled faintly. You finish the show. Gasps echoed across the stage. Finish? Julian repeated. After this scandal. Poirot nodded. Double quotes, yes, for the audience, for the actors, for Margot herself. To let the story be remembered for the art, not the tragedy. Lillian stepped forward. And who will play the understudy role? She asked quietly. Poirot met her gaze. Mademoiselle, he said gently, Margot's final wish was not to be erased. If your heart allows it, speak her name at the curtain call on opening night. Lillian's eyes shone. I will, she whispered. Julian Marsh looked moved, deeply. I'll write something, he said. A dedication. Something honest. Something not in Arden's voice, but mine. Poirot bowed to him, and that, he said, will be your true review. Chapter 10. The curtain falls 2 weeks later. The Imperial Lyric reopened. The audience arrived cautiously at first, drawn by whispers of scandal and the promise of a performance reborn. Reporters waited outside, pencils ready, searching for angles. Inside, the theater glowed with quiet dignity. Poirot sat in the stalls once more, this time without dread. Lillian Vale performed with a tenderness and fire that even Felix Arden, in his most merciless mood, could not have denied. Julian's script, strengthened by pain and insight, carried new weight. The theater breathed again. When the final act ended, the applause erupted like a wave breaking. Lillian stepped forward for her bow, radiant, strong. Then she raised a hand. The theater fell silent. I dedicate tonight's performance, she said, voice steady, to Margot Kent, whose talent, though unseen by many, was real and bright. May she find peace beyond these curtains. Gasps, soft murmurs, then, astonishingly, applause. Soft at first, then rising. Not for the tragedy, but for the acknowledgment. Poirot felt something ease in his chest. After the show, he stepped into the lobby as the audience filed out. Victor Gaunt approached him. Mr. Poirot, he said quietly, thank you. You gave us a way to move forward. Poirot smiled. It was not I, monsieur. It was the truth, which, like the theater, demands that all actors eventually take their bow. He stepped outside into the London night. A light rain fell again, the same polished glow from the night of the murder. Poirot paused, looking back at the theater's marquee, veil of smoke, now dedicated to the memory of Margot Kent. He whispered softly, may her shadow finally rest. And with that, Hercule Poirot walked away from the Imperial Lyric Theatre, another tragedy understood. Good.